Let's talk about India's defense opportunity right now and how exactly India is now going to shape up from a buyer to a builder nation and what lies ahead in the next financial year. We've got retired Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, defense expert, joining in on the show right now. Mr. Sinha, great to have you today on ET Now. Thank you so much for your time. I wanted to first talk about, in times like this, about naval indigenization and the entire shipbuilding business and the kind of opportunities there within. With the Navy now aiming to commission 19 warships in this year itself, the highest ever in a single year target that they've set out. Tell me, how sustainable is this kind of a production tempo for private shipyards like L&T, like Pipavav, as compared to, say, public sector giants like Mazagon, for instance?
Aisha, thank you for getting me on your program. Let me tell you very frankly, as far as the warships are concerned, the PSUs have been doing a good job for a very long time. The private sector has been permitted only about 10 years ago, to make the warships, in which the L&T certainly has the lead, and Pipavav is coming up. There are not enough private sector shipyards, Aisha, in this country who can take on this very challenging task of making the warships. And that is why I think that the shipbuilding industry in the India will have to catch up a great deal, which I believe that in Sagarmala project, the government is spending a lot of money for making absolutely new greenfield shipyards. And I'm also told that there is some very serious talks going on with the South Korean shipbuilding firms and the Japanese shipbuilding firms, so that they can support, or they can tie up with some Indian company and make the shipyard. On its own, the Navy is a very sustainable business, or the shipyards which are making, because Navy has a rolling plan, in the sense that the ships will keep getting decommissioned after so many years, and they have to be replaced. If you recall, in the beginning of last year, we had 40 ships on build. That is because about 30 odd ships were retiring in that year. Similarly, now the ships which will retire, the replacement is all available, because you cannot allow the force levels to come down. And now that you see what is happening in the maritime domain, Aisha, it's in complete turmoil, particularly the Indian Ocean. The Gulf, Persian Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz. A ship got sunk, off the coast of Sri Lanka. So I think that the heat in the Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea is likely to remain. And as long as it remains, no country can let up on the making of, the new ships. So I think the shipbuilding is sustainable, very sustainable in the long run.
Very interesting. But tell me, you've always spoken about the Navy moving from a buyer to a systems aggregator. Purely from a business perspective, what kind of opportunities does it throw up? And in specific, revenue opportunities, say, for the MSME segments?
Quite a lot, Aisha, because the ships are big hulk, as you can see, but they are made of small components which make the ship. And anytime a ship is being built, the builder first sees, is the ecosystem adequate to support the shipbuilding, support the next ship, the whole class of ships, and there are always 5, 6 in one class of ship, or maybe more. For example, the Delhi class has got 8, 9, now 10 ships. So unless the ecosystem can support, because these big shipyards cannot keep making the small components, they have to be supported by the MSMEs. And there, I think there are a large number of MSMEs who are already engaged. And if they are closer to where the shipyard is located, within a sort of reasonable distance, then it's a very good business for them, because this is something which is not going to stop. Also, the ship, as far as the machinery is concerned, by and large, the systems are quite identical in either a merchant ship or a warship. If it requires a valve, it requires a valve on all ships. If it requires a piston, it will require a piston in every ship, all types of ship. Maybe the sizes may vary, but the design and construction remains by and large very similar. So I would say that the MSMEs. If I think the government is paying a lot of attention on MSME, and therefore, even if a shipyard is coming up, a new shipyard, they must look for opportunities as to what ecosystem is required. They can find out from the other existing shipyards, do a little bit of survey as to which are the MSMEs who are actually supporting the shipbuilding in the existing yards. And a very similar setup will be required as far as MSMEs are concerned in the new shipyards. So I think that this is a very long term sustainable from the business perspective, Aisha.
Right. Admiral Sinha, this is Harsh here, by the way. Give us a sense, therefore, at least among the larger ones and among the shipbuilders, you're suggesting that within the private space, it's L&T. Do you believe that more players over there can emerge, or that's extremely difficult in terms of a possibility, just given the size and scale required to kind of build some of this equipment?
No, Harsh, a very good question, really. But as I mentioned in the beginning, that there are not enough shipyards in the country. Defense PSUs essentially make defense-related ships, but this country does not have enough merchant ships. Do you know we spend billions of rupees in hiring merchant ships from other countries? For example, Singapore, maybe maybe South Korea, maybe Japan, who carry our trade from different countries to our harbors and take our trade out. So, which is a big shortcoming, and that is being addressed by the Prime Minister has launched the Sagarmala project. If you look at it, the shipbuilding program, and in next 20, 30 years, it's a huge expenditure. And they have identified at least one big shipyard on each coast, on the west coast and east coast. You can't have too many shipyards, because there are not enough business. But on the merchant ship, side, there is so much of scope, and therefore I would say that they should not only look at the defense PSUs. L&T makes both, but right now it has got large number of defense, contracts in its hand. By the way, it also makes our submarine. The nuclear submarine, most of the part is actually made by L&T.
Correct.
Integration is done at by MDL. So I would say that new shipyards, new players, if they can tie up with L&T, they
Correct.
can tie up with L&T while they're making the yard, because they are quite good in supporting systems. After all, it's an engineering company.
Right.
But I would say that Pipavav has good future, L&T has good future. New shipyards, I would say that is where most of the investment should go.
Okay. And what about the know-how, the equipment that goes within the ship? You believe that India is well placed internally to source this domestically, or are we reliant on foreign partnerships? How should one play that?
Harsh, again, a good question, because it takes me to the nuts and bolts of the engineering part. You're right. As far as the warships are concerned, our warships, except for the engine, it is 100% made in India, including the aircraft carrier that we had, that we built in Cochin Shipyard. The Cochin Shipyard is essentially a private shipyard. I mean, it's a government shipyard, but not a defense PSU. It's just a PSU. Coming back to the question that you have asked, it will be a good idea for anyone who's investing in making a shipyard, or just see the requirements of how many commercial ships that we are going to build in next 5-10 years. Actually, there is no end to merchant ship making, because we don't make enough. We hardly make any. In fact, we made one in Pipavav, then we make one odd in Cochin. And this is where I was mentioning that billions of dollars are being spent in hiring, because as our trade increasing, Harsh, 90% of our trade is overseas. So I am talking about that if 90% of trade is coming in India and the economy is about to hit, cross 4 trillion, you can imagine what is the actual numbers and the quantity of trade which is coming and going. And therefore the future lies in making more and more merchant ship, and we should jump on this occasion. Second point, do we have the know-how? Now, I am told that there is some talk going on with Japanese shipyards, like Hyundai, with the Japanese shipyard, which is, I forget the name, and the Korean ones. The Hyundai is in serious talks with some of our shipyards. So they will tie up with the Indian yards. And my suggestion to MSMEs is that moment the major shipbuilding contract or thing is being awarded, that is when they should all jump in, go to the Koreans, check as to do they have anything specific for this particular ship, or do we have something which is already available in the country. There is a proper book laid down as to which are the MSMEs who make the components. So you can see it in the shipping ministry's catalog. They will all have it. The PSUs, it is all laid down who makes what. So I think it should not be very difficult. If at all there are few new things, then obviously they will have to tie up with some other country.
Right. Point taken. We definitely should have a longer chat on this. There's so much opportunity as you're, enlightening us on the same. But Admiral Shekhar, great to have you today on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Aisha. Nice being on your program.